Welcome to the 11th video in our introduction to selling on eBay, finding sources for the products you want to sell. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to sell on eBay, or sell more on eBay, you obviously need to choose a market or product category or niche product or category on eBay for which there is demand, and where you can compete. Being able to compete comes down to whether you have a source for products at prices that make sense for you. You can, of course, create your own products, but that's a whole different story. This video series isn't designed to be of much help if you're interested, for example, in creating your own product. Perhaps you wish to sell candles. I've heard that some people have done quite well selling candles on eBay. Or perhaps you're quite skilled at making plates or pottery jugs. If you have the skills for creating your own products, that could be a profitable way to go. Of course, you also need to bear in mind how much time it takes you and whether it's a good use of your time, or whether it would make more financial sense to source the products rather than worrying about making them, then just sell directly on eBay. So, how do you find those products? Let's say you aren't going to make the products yourself and you need to find the products. Of course, it comes down to finding ways either to buy them at wholesale or finding a merchant who will drop ship them, or, as I mentioned, perhaps you can buy products cheaply at flea markets or garage sales, but obviously that might not be the most efficient use of your time scouring flea markets. You can potentially buy products at good prices in the wholesale section of eBay. There's a section of eBay devoted to wholesale transactions where you can buy job lots, as they're called. You do need to be careful, though, because often these deals aren't as good as you may think. For example, I was looking at this big box of DVDs of films that you could purchase, and on the surface it sounded like a great deal. Popular films, buy them cheap and sell them on eBay for good profits. But when you really start looking through it, I wasn't convinced that people would really want to purchase those films. They weren't that well known at all. In fact, I didn't recognize any of them. And if you take that film title, for example, and search for it on eBay and see how much it's selling for, I doubt that you'd find anyone at all selling such poorly known films. Or you could search for the film titles online to see if anyone is buying them online. So I'd be careful there, but that's a potential place you could look. Alternatively, of course, you could contact companies directly, sending them a letter saying, "I sell online." Obviously, it depends upon the size of your business, but you could say, "I'm a small merchant, and I sell online, and do you offer, or could you tell me about the wholesale or drop shipping side of your business?" That may be worth doing. Or you can buy one of the wholesale directories, but I can't really recommend that. A lot of people do offer wholesale or drop shipping, but I can't recommend any of them at this point, except one that I'll tell you about in a minute, because I don't know how up-to-date the information is, how good the information is, and so forth. It may be a good starting point, but you may not need to spend the money to buy one of those wholesale listing books. You can buy one quite inexpensively and see what you think, but that's up to you. What you can do is go to Google and search, for example, for wholesale. Or let's say wholesale DVDs. And let's see what comes back. Okay, wholesale DVDs for less. And actually here as well. Just be careful when approaching any of these companies because the price may not necessarily be as good as they make it out to be. Or you may need to buy in huge quantities, so be aware of that. Before you buy anything, obviously you want to do a search for that product on Amazon and on eBay as well to see what price it's being sold for, and also use a Google product search at google.com/products. You can do a product search there and see what they're selling for across multiple merchants. Just be careful because sometimes wholesalers are in fact middlemen. They're pretending to be wholesalers, but they're just reselling products from another wholesaler, and sometimes wholesalers really don't have very competitive prices. So you'll probably have to do quite a bit of research here, but obviously the research will be time well spent if you find a good source for products you can then sell profitably on eBay. Okay, let's go back to wholesale DVDs, and let's bring that up again. So we have these, and you may want to look through them. A useful trick, actually, is that you can search for wholesale login, and OK. Click here to register for wholesale website login if you want to become a ProvoCraft wholesale customer. Basically, it's a nice little tip for finding wholesale login pages on websites. Obviously, you can't actually log in because you aren't registered, but it's a quick way of narrowing down the search to websites that offer wholesale programs. Maybe if you do that search in quotes, it may be slightly more specific, slightly more accurate, so that may be worth doing. For example, you could say, quote, wholesale login, close quote, DVD. That might be useful as well. And let's try dropship login and DVD. Okay, perhaps drop shipper login because there's only 18 results for that. And now there's only 2 for that. So you can see that you'll need to play around with different keywords, but as you can see, these are useful searches for bringing up potential sites that you can contact, and then perhaps buy products from them at wholesale or get them to dropship products for you. Actually, as you search these sites, you will probably come up with other relevant keywords you haven't thought of that you can use here to find other merchants who offer a wholesale or dropship program. Obviously, dropshipper login doesn't seem to work, so let's try it without the quotes. And try dropship login DVD, and let's see what it brings back. Okay, you can see that you're going to have to do some searching, but it can be time very well spent. Now, the source I was going to recommend is very well known and very established. It's at worldwidebrands.com, and this is, as I say, very established, and rather than using some wholesale directory that may be just copied information from some other directory, a lot of the directories are second-hand or even third-hand information, and they're not up to date and not necessarily accurate. But for Worldwide Brands, this is their business, and they make sure they keep in contact with wholesalers. They make sure their information is up to date, that the companies are legitimate, and so on. So this can be a very good resource. You can do a free preview, and it gives you a preview of what it's like. Okay, let's try it now. And okay, here's how it looks. So no category selected. If I again search for antique bookcase, and it's interesting on the product suggestions, antique bookcase, search. Okay, supplier type, dropship wholesalers, light bulk wholesalers. So you can see that different types of suppliers cater to different types of merchants and different types of sellers. If you just want to deal with small quantities, something like light bulk wholesalers might be most suitable for you. In this instance, you see that most of these are zeros, and this one shows one result. For some reason, it's not letting me scroll down, but this says liquidation auctions, one result. So click, and let's take a look. And here's a liquidation auction, full truckload of household appliances, clothes, furniture, toys, and more, over $67,000 value. Okay, there's lots of information there, but you can see that it's hidden because we're just using the free version, which just gives you a taste, really. So if you order now, obviously the price may vary, but at this time, it's a one-time fee, as I understand. And okay, it seems to be behaving a little strangely. I don't have a scroll bar for some reason, So I have to use the cursor keys. And the cursor keys are working, so let me go back here. And I just want to go back to antique bookcase. And I just want to check to make sure I didn't miss anything. And now if I use the cursor keys, okay, they're not working. For some reason, this page doesn't seem to be working as it should. But anyway, we'll go back to where I was before. And what I want to do was order now, just to show you. Let's scroll down. One-time fee, lifetime membership. So at this time, it's $249. So this is a recommended resource. It's very professional, if not the most professional supplier directory online. It's also up to date and very professionally run, so you always get the best information. It's not the most inexpensive, but obviously it may be money very well spent because, as I've shown you, you can start searching for free. All these things combined give you all the information you need to get started. So all you need to do is take the time to approach companies, and approach a lot of companies basically, until you find sources that are happy to sell you products, either in bulk or drop shipped, or even in smaller quantities, however you prefer to work. So you find companies that you're happy to work with who will sell you products at a reasonable price that makes sense to you. Then you can sell those products, and if there's a demand for them on eBay, that's pretty much everything. You've done the research into the categories and competition, you have the products, because you have the supplier who will provide you with the products at a sensible price, there's a demand on eBay, and then you just run the auctions. Perfect the auctions as you run them, because obviously you aren't going to get everything perfect the first time, so respond to feedback. For example, you may find different prices that will work better than other prices, and different ways to present the shipping costs. It's an ongoing process, like anything to do with business. But everything really should come together, and you can launch your eBay business, start selling the products you've outsourced, and start making money. Obviously, it's preferable to make money on the front end, but if you have a long-term view and you're happy to make money from your customers on the back end, either from sending them sales letters or having a catalog website that you refer them to, or an email list for your customers where you can send them special offers. And by the way, if you do that, I strongly recommend that you use an email management service, because if you're sending people emails, you have to make sure you fully comply with the spam laws, which essentially means that people have to be able to opt out at any time. You have to have a valid postal address at the bottom of every email, and there's quite a lot else as well. Quickly, I do recommend Aweber at aweber.com. They're quite inexpensive. It starts at as little as $20 a month at this time, and they have great service. They keep you fully up to date with all the legal aspects of sending emails, because obviously you want to tread carefully when sending emails to people. Okay, you can send your customers emails, you can send your customers newsletters with offers, and so on. That's a whole huge other subject, but really those are just a few ideas on the back end to get you started. But as I've mentioned at the start of this video set, the money is at the back end. That's just generally true in business. The more mature a marketplace is, the more difficult it is to make money on the front end, because generally there are more competitors and the marketplace is more established, so it generally comes down to developing a really good and profitable relationship with your customers. Just to give you an example, when companies go public, they want to reassure their investors, and a measure of their reassurance for their investors, which I've heard quite often, is the value of their customer. That is, the revenue per customer. For example, the more revenue a company makes per customer, and the profit per customer matters as well, but that's calculated differently, but the revenue per customer is really very important, and if that's increasing over time, obviously that's going to reassure investors that the customers are happy and they're spending more and more money with the company. So the small seller like you, the more value you can get from your customers, and you build that value by treating them well, and by making them relevant offers that they respond to, then that's clearly beneficial for your business, and that's really what makes the money long term. Because, I mentioned this at the start, but just by way of example, I recently purchased a DVD recorder so I could record films directly off television onto DVDs. I made the purchase of a second-hand unit on eBay, and it was quite inexpensive. But I haven't heard anything from that merchant since. In the future, it could be a few months or a few years, I'm probably going to want to buy a new television. I'm probably going to want to buy maybe another DVD recorder. Maybe a brand new DVD recorder if I'm happy with the one I have and when I'm used to dealing with it. Maybe I want to buy a personal video recorder or a hard disk recorder as they're sometimes known. But basically the point is I could potentially, over the next few months or years, I could spend hundreds if not thousands of dollars. If that company kept in contact with me, and if they nurtured the relationship and made me good relevant offers that I responded to, rather than being worth the low amount they initially got from me from the front-end sale, I could be worth hundreds if not thousands of dollars to them. But very few merchants really nurture the customer value, customer revenue, and customer profit. If you do that, it becomes a lot easier to compete on eBay because the front end becomes a lot less important, and you can be very competitive on price on the front end on eBay, where people are very price conscious. Instead, you can build a relationship, and for example, you can turn a $50 customer into a $2,000 customer or more over the 2 or 3 years that follow, and you get a lot more profit percentage-wise from those $2,000 or $3,000 on the back end than you do from the $50 on the front end. For one thing, your advertising costs are reduced because you don't need a scattergun approach. It's much more focused, and you know they're much more likely to respond because they've purchased from you previously. The biggest hurdle is the first purchase from any customer. So if you keep that in mind, the front end becomes less important, and you can grow a very lucrative business with a focus on total customer value over the long term.